Great, looks like it's time. I'd like to start off by saying this meeting will be recorded and posted to the Township Video website. You can submit public comment by email to glippincott@westrockilltownship.org. We will take public comment until the end of the meeting, and we will read the public comment prior to the vote at the end of the meeting, depending on what is appropriate. I'd like to start off by welcoming everybody to the West Rock Hill Township Board of Supervisors meeting for February 16th. And I would like to lead in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you join me. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. First thing on the agenda here, does anybody have any public comment on agenda items? If you do, please state your name and address. Hearing none, I'll move on to announcements. And I do believe we are going to be holding an executive session after tonight's meeting. We have to discuss some real estate matters. Is that correct, Mr. Manager?
Real estate and legal.
Real estate and legal, okay. All right, moving on from the announcements, on the consent agenda. It has the January 19th minutes, the wind plan review, the emergency services report, building and zoning, permit report, public works report, Hamburger LLC milers to sign, the tax collectors report, and the treasurer's payment of bills. Mr. Manager, would you read the treasurer's payment of bills?
Sure. This is the treasurer's report ending January 31st, 2022. The general fund has $688,620.94. Highway aid, $74,265.16. Open space, $1,136,550.92. The park fund, $31,339.97. The equipment fund, $1,323.91. Highway capital, $129.91. Streetlight, $34,413.50. The reserve fund, the general fund reserve, $427,649.14. The American Rescue Plan, $273,655.83. Open Space Manderfield, $41,438.74. Sewage Maintenance Fund, $184,387.14. The Stormwater Fund, $7,837.74. And the escrow funds, $2,379,376.95.
Okay. Are there any corrections or additions from my fellow board members?
I have none, David Collingwood, and if there are no other comments or questions, I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion made. Do I hear a second?
No questions. I will second.
Okay, motion's been made and second. All those signify by saying aye.
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 Nay? Ayes have it. Okay, confirmed appointments tonight. We do not have any listed on my agenda here. Moving forward to the committee reports. The first thing on the committee reports would be the Planning Commission report. Chris?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. PC met last Tuesday. First agenda item was our reorganization. The members voted to keep the lineup from the previous year, so I am still the chairman. Alex is still the vice chairman, and Tim Ruth is still secretary. I don't know if you guys have to approve that or you just accept it.
Just accept it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we had two applicants. The first one was Verus Partners. So they are proposing to develop the former 18-acre drum construction property down at Meeting House and Clymer. It's in the planned industrial district. Proposing to build a 185,376 square foot industrial warehouse. And the use would be warehouse, which is allowed in the PI. They do not have tenants for it. It sounds like it's just a speculative build. So there's a lot of things going on with this. First off, as stormwater is a big concern with neighboring properties. Verus is proposing 3 above ground basins and also a spray irrigation system to control the runoff. And they claim that this will the post development runoff will be less than pre-development. So if they can pull that off, I'm sure the neighbors would be a lot happier. Traffic is also a major concern. A traffic impact study was done back in April. McMahon has not reviewed it yet, so we don't know what they're going to have to say about it. One of the questions I had was I couldn't remember what the traffic was like due to the COVID restraints back in April, so I wanted to make sure that we're getting true numbers. So they might have to revisit that with their traffic folks. So they are proposing 2 entrances for the facility on Meeting House, and eliminating the existing entrance on Clymer. They're also looking to waive the maximum width of the entrances due to the need for the extra width for turning, the larger trucks in and out of the facility. Curbs and sidewalks were discussed, as well as road widening, and discussion will continue with that after we receive some of the traffic study reviews. Some widening, it's going to have to be done on Meeting House if it's going to work. And there was discussion of continuing the improvements that Rock Hill Contractor Services had already done down there on Meeting House. There was a fair amount of discussion on various items, as well as questions and concerns, voiced by the neighbors. So Planning Commission moved the table pending plan revisions and reception of further information. So that was it for now for that project. Do you have any questions for him?
I have none. Either you two fellow supervisors have any questions for Chris?
No questions.
David Collingwood, I actually sat in on that meeting, and I will agree with Chris. There were a lot of resident concerns that were voiced that we have to be sensitive to as we move forward. That's my only comment.
Agreed. No questions, but I did comment. That particular location is actually known as the Greater Herd Member. It's when you drive down, if you look up the cut, you can see there's a definite red, blue, red, blue, red. That's some really hard rock. It runs all the way. You can follow that ridge 20 miles either direction. It's actually what Greater Ford is. So digging and getting infiltration, I'd be a little bit concerned that they may run into a Ridge Road sewer situation where the blasting and the digging doesn't go anywhere near as easy as you'd first think just looking at the hill.
Okay. All right. Thank you both for your comments. And Chris, you have anything else?
I do. And I forgot to mention, they are proposing public sewer and water for that project as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we had another applicant. It was THP with their Oakwood Terrace development. They've been in a handful of times with this plan to develop a 16.7 acre tract that was the former Precision Finishing property by the hospital there, lawn and farmers. They're proposing a 72 unit age qualified community, all townhouses, public sewer and water. And there was a handful of issues that township staff and planning commission members had with the project, and they've seems like they've worked most of them out. One of the big ones was a site distance issue at Hidden Meadows Lane and Farmers Lane. Previously, McMahon had said that site distance was no good, and they were going to have to try to get some type of an easement from the neighboring property there to clear some vegetation or something like that. And they got nowhere with that neighbor. So McMahon had come up with another way of handling the issue, which I'm not going to go through tonight, but they came up with a plan, and THP was willing to follow that plan to take care of that issue. So one issue that hasn't been resolved deals with the driveway distance from an intersection. Saldo calls for a minimum of 60 feet. They have a driveway that is at 48 feet. It was previously at 30 feet, and they did some re-engineering and got it out to 48. But we're still concerned with that. So we're hoping to get some more input on that from McMahon, our traffic consultant folks, about that issue. Other than that, they were looking for preliminary on this, and PC was willing to give them conditional pending completion of review notes and this McMahon review. So we are recommending conditional preliminary on that. Any questions on that project?
I have none.
We're going to discuss this further when we get to the engineer's report, correct?
Yes.
Looks that
Okay.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, for the purpose of this, you're merely presenting your report, which we are going to approve your report, which doesn't mean we're going to approve some of the issues that may come up later when Mr. Bala makes his presentation.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, I should have looked at the the full agenda to see what Steve had on. I wouldn't have talked so much. Anyway,
Chris is just giving the planning commission report. That's all we're listening to, his comments, and we will accept his report as presented if that's to the end, whatever. Chris, you have anything else?
I do.
Okay.
We had some old business to discuss. One thing was the comp plan initiatives. Planning Commission member John Swearup had prepared a draft of assignments for the various initiatives, and who should handle these initiatives between the Planning Commission, Conservation Committee, and Park and Rec. And we agreed that he should present these assignments to the various committees. He presented to us what he felt we should be taking care of, and he's going to present to the Conservation Committee and Park and Rec Committee what he thinks and what we think after reading his report they should be handling. So he's going to take care of that, hopefully. We did have some further discussion on Saldo and zoning ordinance, and waiver requests kind of stemmed from the discussion that we're having about cul-de-sac regulations. So at our next opportunity, we're going to have further discussion on those matters. So that is my report.
Okay. Well, that was a very detailed report. Thank you. You were very informative. I should ask my fellow supervisors if you have no further questions. I would entertain a motion for approval of Chris's report.
So moved, David Collingwood.
And
Okay,
seconded,
motion's been
Mr.
made.
Sherman.
Second. Okay. Motion has been made and second. All those signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. Thank you, Chris.
You're
Great
welcome.
job. All right, moving on next is the Park and Rec report. I believe, Greg, are you pinch hitting for Dave today?
I am. The first item in your packet is you have an email from Doug Hanson submitting his resignation as the alternate to the Park and Rec. I would seek a motion to accept his resignation as an alternate.
Okay. Do we have a motion in that order?
I'll move to accept the resignation.
I'll second that
Motion's been
motion.
made and seconded. All those signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
The Park and Rec met on February 10th. We had an in-depth conversation about the fishing derby, farmers, crafters market, and get committed sponsors as well as patrons to both events. The attendance looks to be another great year for both events. The fishing derby, April 23rd, local businesses will be receiving donation letters and or visit from Jay Kaiser for the fishing derby soon. Those letters went out mailed today. The Farmers Craft Market, May 21st, 2020. Word is getting out, and the farmers crafters are beginning to line up to sell their products at the May Market Day.
2022, Mr. Manager.
Oh, May 21st, 2022.
Yes, thanks.
The next item is Movie in the Park, August 13th, 2022. The Park and Rec had initial conversations. September Fest, September 25th, 2022. The Park and Rec is in the beginning stages. Also, the Park and Rec had conversations about the Moore property plan from several years ago to look at the overall plan and where we would like to start planning things like a walking trail for starters. The Park and Rec had a visitor, Gene Griffin, who brought some information about the Liberty Bell Trail discussion that is happening through the township. Dave had a great conversation with Brenda Phelan about the glass case in the township building. Brenda hopes to attend the next Park and Rec meeting to answer any of the other committee members' questions. Dave would like to thank the whole team for another great meeting of Park and Rec.
Okay. That it?
That's it.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval for the Park and Rec report.
I'll move to approve the Park and Rec report.
Okay, motion's been made. I'll second it. All those signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. Thank you. Okay, moving forward, the next thing on the agenda here is the Conservation Committee report. Mr. Schremeyer.
Yes, thank you, and good evening.
Good evening.
Our last Conservation Committee meeting was held remotely on January 20th, 22. And here are the highlights. New open space signs. The signs will be manufactured and the acreage ovals are created, and we plan to have that all completed by early spring, either March or April. And then they'll be installed in spring when it's a little warmer. Newsletter article. The Conservation Committee reviewed and accepted an article for the spring township newsletter. The preserved property map that you usually see in the newsletter, we're making changes to that to make more distinctive colors, having addition of other local resources that are actually open space if you look at it that way, and a new legend to reflect more information. It's still a work in progress, so the working map will be continued to be refined until we have something we're happy with that we'd like to put in the newsletter at a future date. A new member. The Conservation Committee held a brief discussion about a new member candidate we interviewed on November 18th of 2021, and we voted unanimously to accept his application. So the Conservation Committee requests the Board of Supervisors approve Michael Souza to the open seat on the Conservation Committee.
We will bring him up, Mr. Schremeyer, in the Township Manager report. It's listed under appointment for joint or the Conservation Committee, as well as the Joint Rec Authority. If you see that on the bottom of the list there, so we will act on that under the manager's report.
That's fine. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is that all you have, Mr. Schremeyer?
Yes, that is.
Okay, thanks. I'd entertain a motion for approval of the Conservation Committee report as presented, if one of my fellow supervisors would care to make that.
We'll move. David Collingwood.
Okay, Mr. Collingwood, thank you. Do I have a second?
Seconded, Mr. Shermer.
All right, Mr. Shermer, thank you. All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Schremeyer. Moving forward, the next thing on here is the commission reports. Police report, Chief Dickinson. How are you, Chief?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Great.
So make sure we get the dogs corralled before I start talking here. All right. So I have February's Chiefs report. We're going to start off with the amount of calls for service in January of 2022. We had 759 calls for service. Of those calls, 330 of them were in East Rock Hill Township. 429 were in West Rock Hill Township. We handled 24 traffic crashes. 9 of them were in East Rock Hill. 15 were in West Rock Hill. 8 were reportable crashes, and the remaining 16 were non-reportable. Criminal activity for January of 2022, we responded to 3 Part 1 crimes and 21 Part 2 crimes in the month of January, totaling 24 crimes altogether. East Rock Hill reported crimes. We had 1 fraud, a harassment, a disturbance, disorderly conduct. We have two calls for service in regards to that. 2 calls for service to terroristic threats, reckless endangerment call. Our local ordinance violations were 2 dog laws and 1 parking law in East Rock Hill Township. West Rock Hill Township, we had a burglary, a theft, motor vehicle theft, 2 fraud reports, receiving stolen property report, criminal mischief report, public drunkenness report, harassment, another disturbance and disorderly conduct, trespassing, a resisting arrest, and then our local ordinances in West Rock Hill was 1 scattering rubbish and 1 dog law violation. For criminal charges for January of 2022, 1 charge of resisting arrest, 1 charge of harassment, 1 charge of trespassing, a criminal mischief, a public drunkenness arrest, a PFA violation, and a receiving stolen property arrest. Other police activities for January of 2022, we had 203 traffic enforcement details. We issued 14 citations, 30 traffic warnings, conducted 29 school checks, 133 park checks, and 5 foot patrols. And then for your overall stats for the year to this point, 759 calls for service, 24 total year accidents for this. For 2022. Yearly offenses for 2022 was 24, and then we filed 7 criminal charges so far this year. And that would be your chief's report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Either of my 2 fellow supervisors have any questions for the chief?
No questions, no comments.
Okay.
Nope, no questions.
All right. I'll entertain a motion then for approval of the chief's report as presented.
Also
So moved, David Collingwood.
seconded, Mr. Shermer.
Okay, thank you. All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thanks, chief.
Thank you very
Well
much.
done. Yep. Okay, moving forward. Next on the commission reports is the Joint Rec Authority. Ms. Jan Dietz.
Good evening, everybody. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Well,
We had our Joint Rec Authority meeting on February 3rd, and I reported back everything that was asked that we put together. And I feel that we did a very thorough job for you, and I hope each one of you have had a chance to look at the packet of information. We voted unanimously to open the pool for the 2022 season. At this point, we have had 4 inquiries for lifeguards. We have had 2 lifeguards that showed interest to come back from Quakertown. We are in search of a pool manager, but we are working on that at the present time also. We went as a group over to the pool and walked the grounds and looked at different aspects that we felt that were important, that what needed to be fixed. We prioritized them. We worked on, one of the things that we have worked on is we acquired a quote to take down the 2 trees by the driveway, which we had spoken about at the last meeting. And West Davenport has agreed to drop the dead trees for us. And he will cut them into lengths that we can bring them outside of the fence, and we're going to put it up for free, the wood. And we're going to have to chip the branches and things of that nature. So that was one thing that we accomplished in the last week. Another is that Kevin, my husband, came over and checked the grates for the chlorine tanks. There is 1, possibly 2 that need to be replaced. So he and I decided that we will donate them to the pool. And he has ordered them, and they should be in about 2 weeks. So the tanks can be removed and the new grates put down. So that's another thing. One of the other issues was that we thought we had a roof leak in the pool, but I don't believe that we do. We have to have it checked, but by looking at it, it looks fine. We had a call, the alarms were going off, and the fire department came, and they took the smoke detectors down, and water came out of the smoke detectors, but we think that that's a whole other issue that has nothing to do with a roof leak at all. And during their visit, they recommended to us that we have a knock box put out front. And so we voted and agreed on that, and that has been ordered. So that was one thing. And then we sat and we compiled a lot of information. Every single member of the authority brought all their ideas to the table, and we came up with some really good ways to fundraise, which we're starting. We're having a craft fair, and on, I believe it's April 30th, up at the pool. And then there is other things that are going on. We're looking for corporate sponsors at this time. We're hoping to get a letter out to the businesses in the community for donation, which would both fall under the, we would like to have each one, the president of the chairperson, I'm sorry, of the township as well as the borough, to kind of reinforce that and sign the letter as it goes out. But that is discussion that needs to be had together. So we have mailing lists ready to go. So we think that we're in a good position right now. So my question is, I guess I want to say to you, we are going to open the pool for the 2022 season. Can we count on your contribution for that?
Okay, well, there is a couple things that go along with that, of course, is being able to fund or manage the pool as far as the staffing.
Okay.
Being able to have the staff to staff the pool. And then I thought we were going to sit in on a joint meeting between the representatives of the township and the borough.
Okay, and we are inviting you to our March meeting.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Well, that's the first Thursday of the meeting, or the month, you say?
Yes. So that
All right,
would be the 3rd of March.
Okay. 3rd of March. Are there any questions from my two fellow supervisors for Mrs. Dietz regarding this request at this time?
No questions. I'll have the comment later, but
Okay. Mr. Collingwood?
I have a comment or two or three, and then I have a couple of questions.
Okay. Well, what I would like to say from my perspective at this time, I am still open ears to the request of funding, okay? I'm not committed 100% yet on the additional funding that was requested. But I would like to sit in your March meeting and listen to the plan and the authority discussion on what steps are going to be taken to try to generate revenue, and as far as committing to the staffing issues. Because if both the borough and the township commit more money and then you can't open the pool because you don't have the staffing, that would not look good. So
I understand.
yes, I would like to at least hear that before we commit to any additional funding. That's only my perspective, okay? I'm giving each of the two supervisors their chance to weigh in on what they feel. So, Mr. Shermer, you got a comment?
Yes, I have. Well, since I'm the liaison to the Holiday House board, one of the important things that a little bit of research turned up is since Holiday House is a separate municipal authority, it actually is eligible for ARP funds, which is one way of looking at paying this back come the future. When you go back, initially Holiday House actually took out loans. It's a municipal authority with actually bond underwriting, which has not been used in 50 years, but that's still there as a possibility. And we were able to go back and identify over the last 2-3 years, several hundred people have moved into the area who are within 15 or 5, based on whether they're 5, 10, 15, or 20-minute drive. So we have a lot of people who just haven't heard about the pool. And
Okay.
getting a note out to them, asking them to join. Excuse me. Getting a note out to them and asking them to join is going to be one very straightforward way of increasing the funding and increasing use. Excuse me. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Collingwood,
Yes, may I speak?
you may. Floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I have some general comments that I want to make, and then I have some specific comments and questions I want to make that are specific to the pool. The general comments I want to make are, first of all, in my opinion, the township is not for profit. And I think the township should be providing services for the residents. And I think the township should support local organizations that are important to the community, that the residents support, and that the residents enjoy. Any organization should be supported by our township. This is not a swimming pool. This is not a senior center. This is not a historical society. This is our swimming pool. This is our senior center, and this is our historical society. We as a township need to promote the township in any way possible. Now, that said, I'm pleased that we are addressing a major township issue. And Jan, I just wanted, if I could just say to you, your report was extremely well written. It was thorough. It was detailed. You obviously spent a lot of time on it. I spent a lot of time reviewing it. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I also want to say that I fully support funding for the pool. However, there are some questions. And some of those questions echo what we've already heard this evening. I was concerned about the availability of lifeguards when we get to the point that the pool, if and when it's opened. You say you're still looking for a manager. In your report, you talked about requesting a one-time contribution of $20,000 this year, which then in subsequent years would drive that further down to where it would be between $5,000 and I think $7,500 per year you were suggesting.
Yes.
And then there was one point where you said, well, if the pool does not open, we'd be looking for $15,000 one-time payment, not the $20,000. But now you've since said you're planning on opening the pool.
Mm-hmm.
I too was wondering about, as was Mr. Kaiser, the Sellersville Borough and West Rock Hill somehow, some way, legally getting together. I would like to attend the next Holiday House meeting as a private citizen. My position is I don't know that I can make a decision tonight for any amount of money. But I think we're all on the right track. I just think we need to continue to look at this. We need to continue to meet. We need to continue to discuss. As I said, I am in full support of funding for the pool.
Thank you.
That's my thoughts. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I heard one thing positive from all three supervisors, and that is the efforts that have been put forth by you. And I do believe that you are definitely on track with your letters to all the businesses. I've tried to promote this for years, as you may know. This pool has to be funded, has to be able, in my opinion, it's not in everybody's opinion, but it's in my opinion for sure. and it has been in other citizens' opinion, that the pool should be able to fund itself. The townships give money to the pool, yes, and I understand that, and I even voted to increase that when we went from 10,000 to 13,000. However, the pool being a standalone entity and it's run by a joint authority, there are many businesses between the township and the borough. There's a lot of them, and nobody's ever going after all those businesses like we do for the fishing derby or the ladies auxiliary does for the hospital. I think there's a huge amount of money, but all 6 members of the Joint Rec Authority have to be on board to promote that. And I
Right.
think you are a definite plus right now in what you've been doing so far. So I just want to make that comment to you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
I share Mr. Collingwood's comment that I would like to sit in on the, not that we can say anything, us being their citizens, but we could possibly ask questions, and we could listen to the Joint Rec Authority, run their meeting and what their ideas will be. So that's my position regarding this now. Mr. Shermer, you have any comment?
Just wanted to mention that one of the things which was brought up was a simple point of we need to put up signs so that people know how to get here, and people know about this. I'm going through back to the 1969 formation of this. The records actually did indicate that the initial idea and what was working pretty well is that the township and the borough would fund the capital costs, and then the rec authority would be able to continue based off of income and use, and without tossing stones at glass houses. Then once Menlo Pool was upgraded, we got nailed and lost a lot of people. We dropped down below 1,000 subscriptions, and since then it's been fighting because we've had a lot of other pools which have been spruced up, have been changed, which have gone through the process of sending out a flyer to everybody in the service area. What would you like to see? And we can make it for you. So we're catching up with that a little bit, but I think we're definitely on the right track.
Thank you. Okay, with that being said, I would like to suggest that we table any contribution money until we listen to or sit and visit the next Joint Rec Authority meeting.
Okay, and I do understand your stance with that, but also we have $0. So for us to be able to start to do mailings and things like that, we're going to be behind the 8 ball, waiting till March. So I'm
Okay.
asking, could there be a partial contribution then?
Mr. Collingwood?
Has Sellersville been asked that same question?
I believe they are. Yeah, they have been. I believe that they're having a meeting sometime this week. I'm not sure. But yes, we're going to ask them also and go from there. But if I could even get a partial contribution from you so we can get these mailings underway and do some advertising and things of that nature.
Do you have any idea what kind of dollars you're talking about? Just for the purpose of the discussion.
Well, since you want to table it totally, I'm thinking maybe if we could get $5,000 at this point to help us get up and running and get everything moving along, and go from there.
Well, over our last several years, I think the average contribution or the base contribution had been 15.
13.
If memory
13, right.
13.
Yep. I would support that.
Yeah,
I
I
would
would move that we make the base contribution of 13 to be supplemented depending on how things move afterwards.
I second that motion.
Wait a minute. I missed what he said there because I was supporting her $5,000 request.
I'm well, not quite poker, but I'm saying instead of 5, if we have a standard of 13, then I think that we should make a contribution that we usually make and then we will see about additional contributions depending on the results and what else we learn after a joint meeting. But I think we should.
That's your motion? Is that a form of a motion, Mr. Shermer?
Yes.
Okay.
I would move that we make we make the base contribution of 13,000 to be supplemented or not, depending on the outcome of the meeting and further review.
Okay. And Mr. Collingwood, you seconded that motion?
I did.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded on the $13,000 contribution. All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
You have it, Mrs. Dietz.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You got a lot of work to do.
Yes, we do, and we will do it. Thank you.
Okay. Are there anything else? Any other comments regarding your report?
No, not really. Our meeting was basically that.
All right. I will make a motion myself to accept the Joint Rec Authority report as presented. Do I have a second?
Before we second, I think Mr. Miller has his hand up for public
Oh,
comment.
I'm sorry. I missed that. You all right? Jim?
You're muted, Jim.
Go ahead, Jim. You're muted.
I was pushing the wrong button.
Oh.
Sorry. Jan, I just wanted to ask. Yeah, I got it. Jim Miller, West Rock, 1,000-acre road, 916 1,000-acre road. Jan, I just wanted to remind you that I did have someone last year who was interested in being the manager this year. He
Okay.
was a longtime manager at another pool in Bucks County, and he retired from there. I will
Okay.
get to that name. He
All right,
lives-
great. That would be awesome. Thank
He lives
you.
up on Ridge Road, so he's local. Thank you. Okay,
Good. Thank you, Jim.
that's all I.
Okay. So we had a motion made second. All those signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Very good. Moving forward. The engineer's report is next on the agenda. Mr. Bala.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
So we have a few items under my report. The first are the bids that we had out this month. Well, the first one is the salt shed bid. You have the bid summary in your report. AK Petersheim Builders LLC was the low bid, base bid of $87,332. What we did, we bid the base bid included a concrete floor, which is what Public Works had recommended, and then we put an alternate in for an asphalt floor, depending on the cost that we got. As you'll see on the Petersheim Builders, their price actually goes up for the asphalt floor. I questioned them on that, and that's because they do the concrete floor in-house, and they'd have to contract somebody to do the asphalt floor. So they could actually do the concrete floor for cheaper than the alternate asphalt floor.
The better floor anyway.
Yeah.
I would think
And they, just as a reference, they just did the Game Commission building up on Gameland Road. That was a local project that they constructed. They submitted all the appropriate paperwork, so I would recommend that you award the bid to Petersheim for $87,332.
All right. Do we have a motion on that?
I'll make that motion, David Collingwood.
Motion's been made. How about a second?
I will second, but I will ask one quick question. Do they powder coat, or is there some way of powder coating? Because I know that concrete and salt don't get along. Do they have do you have something? How do they keep that from?
Well, we'll put a spray sealer on it.
Okay.
Okay. That satisfy you, Hal?
Yep.
Okay.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and second. All those signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Salt shed is awarded.
Okay, thank you. I will make them aware. The second bid was for the culvert projects. We lumped a whole bunch of culvert replacement projects. Most of them were smaller culverts, but then there was one larger one, which would be the dual culvert on Old Bethlehem Pike near Chris Thurstein's house, for a reference. That project, because of some DEP permitting that we had, really brought the price up. See, that was item 2. That was a $54,000 item itself. We did not bid this prevailing wage because we anticipated being under the $100,000 limit we have for road projects. And you can see that, you know, all our bid came in over that, the lowest at $133,200. So after talking with staff, our recommendation is to reject these bids and rebid the project with all, for this year, all the small culverts, including one additional one that Seth identified, which will bring us in under 100,000 this year in culvert projects, and then push the Old Bethlehem Pike culvert to, say, 2023 and bid that as a separate project. That'll keep us out of prevailing wage, which would escalate the costs.
So then
Sounds good to me.
you're going to redo this bid and we'll look at it at the next month's meeting. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I anticipate having them back for the next month.
Okay.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Steve.
And that brings us to the TH Properties project. We have representatives here from TH Properties, I believe. So I'll let them make their presentation.
Hi, yeah, I'm Bob Irick.
Hey, Bob. How are you?
How are you?
Very good. Thanks.
We were last before you via a Zoom call with a question that had to do with the provision of right of way. At that meeting, you strongly recommended that we consider that, and we took your suggestion and revised the plan to provide right of way along all of the drives and to provide the minimum front yard setback for each of the units, which in turn also increased the length of the driveway to a minimum of 38 feet. Previously, we had several units that were around 20 feet. So the plan that you see here tonight and that the Planning Commission had recommended recognizes that right of way and the longer driveway length. We did have to make some changes as we were up against the impervious surface limitation. So some of the, actually the interior units, which were previously 2-car garages, are now 1-car garages. And the units are now a little bit shallower in depth than they were previously, but we still comply with the maximum impervious surface requirements. The other issue had to do, and Chris had mentioned that earlier in his report, had to do with the separation of a driveway from an intersection, and that would be unit number 1, which is the first unit coming in the second drive. That's the sidewalk slope. Can you go? Yeah, keep going. Oh, you know what? It's prior to that. Sorry, Greg. There you go. The drawing on the top shows unit number 1, which originally was about 30 feet from the intersection. And by sliding the units, each of the clusters to the left and doing flipping the hand of the driveway, we were able to increase that separation to 48 feet, which is the equivalent of 3-car lengths. At the Planning Commission meeting, it was suggested that addressing that be a condition of that preliminary recommendation, and to have McMahon take a look at it and see if that is still a safe situation. TH Properties is agreeable to that condition. We do have a review letter. If you had any questions on Steve's letter, we can go through them item by item, or if you have any in particular. But the vast majority of those comments will comply, and with the exception of the waivers, which are addressed in a separate waiver request letter.
Okay. Steve, anything jump out at you?
Not in particular. They've addressed the vast majority of our engineering comments. We have sent that sketch that you just looked at regarding the driveway to McMahon for comment, so we're waiting for that response.
Bob, I'd like to ask one question. Well, I should say a comment regarding, because I am concerned about that McMahon, the traffic thing there too with unit number 1. If the road coming in there would be people coming off the road into the units, right? The development.
That's correct.
Yes, my concern, because I know how people drive, being a professional driver, somebody backing out of that driveway, that number 1 unit, and somebody's flying in coming in around that corner there. That is a big concern of mine for sure. I know that there was a discrepancy on the footage, the amount of footage from that unit to the roadway. So I'm just going to share my concern as well, but I'm not a traffic engineer like McMahon, so I will let them make their decision or their comment if they are going to make a further comment on it.
Okay.
Would the board think it's appropriate to defer the consideration of that waiver request until final plan approval so that you have the opportunity to hear from McMahon?
I would feel comfortable with that request.
And we're okay with that.
Okay. Thank you. Any of my fellow supervisors have any questions regarding the rest of the letter?
David Collingwood, just a couple of things here. Going back to this driveway, that's 48 versus 60 feet that's in question, correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
All right. And the second one is, and I guess I have to defer either to our solicitor or to the engineer. Wasn't there some phase 2 environmental issues associated with this particular plan, or has that been resolved? To the degree that these will eventually go on the market and be sold as private homes.
Yeah, I don't think it was an issue of whether they complied with Act 2. I think the issue, we require a residential disclosure statement when agreements of sale are issued or executed for lots in new subdivisions. And that disclosure provides a lot of information to this prospective purchaser, including the location of active open space areas that might be near or adjacent to the lot that the customer is thinking about buying, the existence of any obligations to maintain any facilities, that not necessarily in this case, but sometimes a stormwater basin or a stormwater facility will be on a private lot. We have a list. It's about a page and a half worth of things. We believe that the Act 2 agreement should be part of that residential disclosure statement, and the applicant has indicated its reluctance to include that. Staff's recommendation is that, that be a condition of preliminary plan approval.
And if I could just comment on that, this is Kate Durso, the attorney for TH Properties. Our concern with putting it in that kind of disclosure is that we think it's going to be more confusing because the Act 2 clearance does show that it meets all requirements. We would prefer that it be noted in the deed into our client, and it would be then subject and found in the title search so that we would have the environmental disclosure set forth there. The concern is not as much, it's not a matter of not wanting the buyer to understand, to know about it. It's them being able to understand about it. And when you put it in the residential disclosures, there's not really an easy way to explain what it consists of. But if you put it in the deed, you can explain it just like you would have any other type of environmental constraints set forth on a conveyance of property.
The township staff's position is that no one reads their deed. Disclosure statements have to be signed contemporaneously with the execution of the agreement of sale.
But that would only be for the first home buyer. It would not be for, but if it's in a deed, it's in the title search, and any other buyer in the future would be cognizant of that requirement because it would come up in the title search.
We can do both. You don't have an Act 2 agreement that's recorded against the properties?
Not that I'm aware of. I did try to confirm that, but not that I'm aware of. But again, I don't know how you would, how are you asking us to say this in a residential disclosure form? Just the property is subject to an Act 2?
Well, that's something, Kate, that we can work out and come up with something that you're comfortable with and we're comfortable with, that is easily understood by the buyer. This property, was once contaminated, but it is subject to cleanup under Act 2, and the cleanup will be ongoing, and the DEP has determined that this property is safe for use as residential facilities. I think gives all of the information and not just half of the information.
Yeah, but I think once somebody hears contaminated, you have people panic and not understand the lengths that you go to get the clearances by the state.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with you. It can be spelled out clearly, I believe.
But I don't think it's required.
I never said that it was required, Kate. The township requires a residential disclosure statement, and staff's recommendation is that this be included in that residential disclosure statement. If you don't, you have the ability to appeal.
Yeah, could this be something that you and I could work on the language and then push it off to final plan so that we could kind of come up to, so I can have a better understanding of exactly what you wanted to say?
I think the condition should be attached to preliminary plan approval. We can work on the language. I'm more than happy to try and work with we're not trying to hurt the project. And yeah, we can talk about the language, and if we agree on something by final plan approval can record specifically what the disclosure will be.
Well, I guess we could, I'm not opposed to pursuing that. And I guess if not, we will have to appeal the condition.
Okay.
Yeah. From my perspective, I think we, as a representative of this township and the people, we need to make sure we have something in place. And I believe our solicitor is correct in what she's stating. So that's my view. Thanks.
I agree, David Collingwood.
Yep, and I agree, Hal Shermer, and I believe that would also get picked up by, when these are resold, that would probably be included in the seller property disclosure, because it's something that the seller was made known of and has to disclose as you keep going down the line, which takes care of itself.
It wouldn't be required to be disclosed in the seller's property disclosure because it's not something specific to that property, but I understand where you're going with this.
Okay, thanks. All right, what's next?
We were on David's questions. Mm-hmm. I just note that Mr. Irick indicated that with a few exceptions, everything in the engineer's letter was a will comply. I think it would be important to know what those exceptions were.
Mary, they're pretty much spelled out in the waiver request letter of November 12th.
So unless you've requested a waiver, everything in the engineering review letter is a will comply?
Yes.
Steve, is there anything you think the board needs to talk about?
No, I think as Mr. Irick indicated in the beginning of the meeting, the plan has been revised to address the road width, right-of-way, and parking concerns that the Board of Supervisors voiced when this was looked at as a sketch plan. And with the conditions in our, I guess this goes to our December 8th, 2021 letter. I'm satisfied.
And you have no objection to any of the waivers?
No, with the caveat that we were going to defer the waiver on the driveway entrance for comment by McMahon.
Right. Then, Mr. Chairman, yes. I think the next step would be to authorize our office to prepare a resolution for a preliminary plan approval that you can consider for adoption at your next meeting.
Okay. I will entertain a motion for that wording as Mary has just described. Will anybody make that motion?
So moved, David Collingwood.
Okay,
And
motion
seconded, Mr. Shermer.
seconded. All those signify by saying aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, I do not have anything else under my report unless there's any questions.
I have none.
I have none.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the engineer's report as presented.
So moved, David Collingwood.
Motion's been made.
And seconded, Mr. Shermer.
Seconded.
Seconded.
All those signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on. Solicitor's report. Mary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing under my report this evening.
Oh, nice. Well, that's okay. You covered it.
I can sing a song or something if you
Please
need
no.
to hear from me, but other than that,
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
We're not gonna approve because you had no report. Next on the agenda here is the Township's Manager Report. Mr. Lippincott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item is appointment to the Conservation Committee vacancy. In your packet, there is an applicant from Michael Sousa of Lonely Road. He was interviewed by the Conservation Committee and they recommended him for appointment.
Okay. I guess I'll entertain a motion for approval of the appointment.
I'll move to appoint him to the Conservation Committee. Excuse me.
Okay, motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
I will second.
I'll second it. All right, David, you second it. There you go. Thanks. Okay, all those signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. He's appointed.
The next item is appointment to the fire marshal position vacancy. We sent out emails to all the fire chiefs. We got back Doug Wilhelm from Ridge Road. His resume is in your packet. He's extremely qualified for the volunteer fire marshal position.
And I would agree with that. So I would make a motion that we appoint Doug Wilhelm. Do I hear a second?
Second, David Collingwood.
Okay, motion's been made and second. All those signify by saying aye. Aye. He's appointed.
The next item is appointment to the Joint Rec Authority. Mr. Kevin Dietz applied for that vacancy. It's the only application that we got, and I would recommend that you appoint Mr. Kevin Dietz.
Yes, I want to make one comment before we move forward with this, because it was a concern of mine, as Greg knows. But I'm okay. I'm going to be okay with it. I was concerned that having a husband and wife on the same committee, that if they went away, they'd have two people missing, or something happened to have two people missing from the Joint Rec Authority. But I don't think it's going to be an issue, and therefore I don't have any concern regarding it at this time. So I would like to hear a motion for approval of Mr. Kevin Dietz to the Joint Rec Authority.
I'll make that motion, David Collingwood.
Okay, motion.
And I will second. And I would also note that Kevin worked for Bucks County Water and Sewer, so it is good to have somebody who knows pipes, plumbing, and heavy equipment involved with the Holiday House.
I agree. So we have a motion made and second. All those signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. He is appointed.
And one quick question, can you hear me better?
Yes.
Okay.
That is all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. With that, I would make a motion to accept the Township Manager's report as presented. Do I have a second?
I will second.
All right, motion's been made and second. All those signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Let's have it. All right, next on the agenda here is old business, and that comes up as the display quote, new sketches and proposal regarding the cabinet. I guess, is this for the the artifacts and stuff that were for the vestibule?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Where are we at?
You have a new quote in your packet with dimensions and whatnot. The board needs to take action, whether they want to approve it, disapprove it, table it.
Yep. So at last month's meeting, if I remember correctly, I was opposed to the township taxpayers paying for it, and I thought that it should be over across the street in the Historical Society house, or you call it the Heritage House now. And that was what the intent was when the house was given. There were different opinions, but there was supposed to be two meetings. I guess David was supposed to go with Chris to meet in the vestibule, and so was Hal. Hal, did you have a chance to meet with Chris and look that over and discuss? You know, there were some concerns of yours regarding the sunlight beating in there and so forth.
Yes, I was able to meet with Chris, and Brenda from the Historical Society asked if she could tag along. We figured that'd be a lot easier to have three people looking around and getting an idea for the location, the layout, and where things would be, how things would be put together. So, yep, I met, and we also had a third party there. We also had the Historical Society head there getting a good idea of what can be done and should be done.
Okay.
And I will note, just for the public feedback, that we have gotten a bunch of letters which are both in support of having display cases and also in support of the township funding the display cases. But I guess I should, if David has any comments or questions before I go off on the monologue.
Yep, I was going to ask David. Go ahead. You got the floor, David.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lippincott, I believe there were at least 10 letters that support this initiative that were sent to the Board of Supervisors. And I would, if you won't, but I would like you to read their brief, read those letters for the citizens to hear.
Sure. The first one is from Penny Markley. Dear West Rock Hill Township Board of Supervisors, as I reflect on the legacy of 45 years of voluntary service that my husband gave to this township, I feel the need to make a point for those who make decisions for our township today. You work for us. You were elected to serve, and you have an opportunity to help the community that has suffered through 2 years of uncertainty and depression. We need our citizens to be proud of their heritage and for them to have a way to display artifacts for future generations. You certainly should be able to afford for a display case. The township also needs to provide recreational activities for our youth who have had many activities curtailed by mandates and restrictions. Jeff begged and pleaded for years for more funding for the Holiday House pool. Now is your opportunity to come through and to do something for the community. It is time for you to do observable things for the people for whom you work. The township leadership should do things for their citizens who live here, not for the administration. Citizens need to see that you are working for them and not yourselves. With all the development occurring in the township, I feel you can afford to fund these projects. We owe this to you. You owe this to the public who you elected to serve. The next one is from Ida and Harry Law. Harry and I would like to see the artifacts from West Rock Hill Township displayed in the glass closed cabinet in the lobby of our township building so it's easy for all residents to view the display. Thank you. 521 Thousand Acre Road. The next one is from Brenda Phelan. As the president of the West Rock Hill Historical Society and taxpayer, I wholeheartedly approve of the funding with taxpayer dollars of the cabinet in the lobby of the township building to showcase the artifacts that were donated to the society by township residents and businesses for the public's enjoyment, as well as for the purpose of educating the public on the people and culture of the region. Brenda Fay. Debbie Neeson and Sandy Leopold. Hello, I think it would be nice to have a cabinet in the lobby to display the West Rock Hill Historical Society's artifacts. Since we need to be out of the display case in the meeting room, hopefully soon we will be able to move everything across the street to the historical building that we are working very hard to get ready. Thank you. The next one's from Pat Dunlap. As a resident, I fully endorse the purchase of a display case for the front lobby of the township using taxpayers' dollars. The artifacts to be displayed are township treasures donated by township residents. These artifacts belong to the citizens of West Rock Hill Township and should be seen by everyone entering the township lobby. The Board of Supervisors should do everything possible to promote the township. That includes funding an additional display case in the lobby for the artifacts that represent our treasured history. Next one is from Marie Deserode of Lonely Road. To the West Rock Hill Township Board of Supervisors, as a West Rock Hill taxpayer and a charter member of the West Rock Hill Historical Society, I would like to request that the supervisors approve the motion to purchase this display case that will showcase the Historical Society's collection of artifacts. These treasures have been donated by the West Rock Hill taxpayers with the intention to help preserve and tell the story of how our township came into existence. I believe it is not only the responsibility, but the duty of the supervisors to support this effort by approving the environmentally safe storage of the case, displaying these memories, and making them accessible, i.e. the township lobby area, to the public taxpayers. Next is from Jim Miller. Sadly, displaying and preserving our precious West Rock Hill artifacts has become snagged in the politics of our township chair, Jay Kaiser. A simple display case in the lobby of our township administration building should not require months and months of acrimonious debate. With the precedent Mr. Kaiser has made in this public mission to disparage our historical society and deny it any township support. He constantly laments that the Historical Society has been granted use of a moldy, unusable heritage house for a nominal annual fee of $1. What is never mentioned is that the Historical Society continues to spend tens of thousands of dollars to rehab the building and make it structurally and aesthetically sound. The Board of Supervisors need to be reminded that this building is owned by West Rock Hill Township and therefore should be maintained by West Rock Hill Township. The artifacts belong to West Rock Hill Township, not the county, not the state. They belong in the lobby of our township administration building, protected and proudly displayed for all residents to learn about our cherished and storied history. We want to extend our deepest appreciation for the Historical Society for all their work preserving and documenting our history. We fully support using our tax dollars to build and install the display case in the lobby of our administration. Next one is from Anita Martinez. Dear West Rock Hill Board of Supervisors, as a taxpayer in West Rock Hill Township, I'm expressing my concern about the care and display of our township history through artifacts. We, the people, are the caretakers of these artifacts, and we should proudly take care of them properly and display them all to see. I support the purchase and installation of the display case for the lobby of the township building. It is not a great expense in which we can surely afford and adds positive sense of pride for the taxpaying community. It is a great way to share the treasures of our community history with its citizens. As a member who has lived and paid taxes since 1912, whose grandfather was a town supervisor, I know the value of keeping our history alive for those who are in the next generation who live here. The purchase of a new display case is a necessity. The next one's from Anthony and Rita Cipriano. The residents of West Rock Hill Township, my husband and I are proud of the heritage left behind as these artifacts by residents who came before us. These artifacts should be on display for the residents and the public to see. What better way to appreciate our history than through the artifacts displayed in the case in the lobby of our township building, all financed with public money. This is from Frank Semendaris, Frank and Chris Semendaris. To all the township board members, as residents of West Rock Hill Township for the past 45 years, an active member of the Historical Society, my wife and I wholeheartedly give our support to the use of tax dollars to purchase or have a built display to furnish historical artifacts for the education as well as the enjoyment of residents and visitors alike in our great town. It is important to make aware to all who live, as well as those who eventually will live in West Rock Hill Township, of how we became a great little town and how proud we are to be a resident.
Thank you, Mr. Lippincott. The residents have spoken. That's all I have to say.
That is all the letters.
Okay, Hal?
Yes. I was actually curious if it's possible to, since I know we have a lot of interest in this, but one of the things which I did find is when first trying to think about how to put together the display case and where it was going, although I'm really, really familiar with the township building, until I actually tried to think and draw it out, I could not remember it. So one of the things which I have done is actually gone in and looked at the township building and the layout. Excuse me. As I'm losing my voice on the most important discussion here. My big concern is that this is going to be putting a display case in front of the existing glass windows in the township building. For one, I was curious, is it possible for me to actually present and share a screen like you do in Zoom, or is that technically a little bit?
Yeah, you can present a screen. All I have to do is Sherry has to stop presenting.
Okay. Excuse me. All right, so how do I get this started? Excuse me.
On the bottom row, there's a square with the arrow that says present now.
And not see. Okay, edit it. There we go. All right. So if this works, you should be seeing one of the display cases.
Yep,
there we go.
That's the one on the left.
Yep. So just for background, that I have actually gone through and thought about this, and hopefully everybody else will perhaps need to think about this. These are display cases that we currently have, which are situated behind the supervisor's desk and DS. So this is the left side display case and a close-up of some of the information which is in the left side display case. And then we get to the right side display case, which is currently used by the Historical Society. So I know this is one of those situations where everybody who's seen a township meeting knows that they've seen it, but most people, even when I was thinking about it, you think about how many shelves, what's on display, what are we dealing with, what are we talking about? Now, the most important thing is that the current proposal is to put a display case in front of those two windows in the entryway, which does seem a little bit backwards. That I know that it's important to display important historical objects, but when you look through the township building and try to figure out what's the best place to put a display case, putting a display case in front of two existing windows doesn't really seem to make sense. For the people who aren't in the township building often, this is looking at what's now the tax collector's office. And if you turn around to the left, you have the one little vestibule with the table for information. You have the entryway. You have another vestibule on the left side, And then you have the big display wall by the staircase down to the basement. And then also our display racks. And that's a better context shot for what most people think about. So what we're talking about is putting a display case in here and blocking off these two windows. These are nighttime shots of the same location when I was there with Chris and with Brenda. Now, across the street is the Heritage House. This is the current entrance, which was added on to an older house. So we do have a fair amount of window space and a fair amount of open location. The property does have the Victorian style floor to ceiling windows. And as you can see, the historical house is still a work in progress. There are 3 floor to ceiling Victorian style windows across the front. And I forgot to load, then you have the entry vestibule, which was added on when it became the police station, if I recall. So right now we're looking at a proposal to put a roughly 5-foot by 7-foot display case into the township building in front of the glass panels, which are currently part of the tax collector's office. And we're looking at approximately $3,100 for that display case. So when you divide it out, it comes out to roughly $88 per square foot. For comparison, for West Rock Hill funding Holiday House, we're talking about $13,000. So this is roughly 1 month or 6 weeks worth of funding Holiday House to go for displays, which is why I'm concerned about it, because I want to see people see these objects, but I'm also concerned about, is there an easier way? What I did find, this is the interior window in the historical house. What I did find is simply looking around that if you go on Facebook Marketplace, you can get a display cabinet for $250. And if you look around again, you can find replaceable display cabinets for like $80, $90. And you can find display cabinets for $125. You can find jeweler style display cabinets for $45, other display cabinets for $150, and glass display case $100, $200. And that brings us back to the regular display case. So what I'm looking at is we can get used display cases, which we can move around and go from the lobby of the township building over to the historical house, or more importantly, over to the lobby of the West Rock Hill Elementary School, or over to the lobby of the Holiday House. Because in researching the deeds for the Holiday House, the original mission statement was for Holiday House to be for recreation, conservation, and historical appreciation. So what I'm looking at and trying to balance here, is the interest between having the existing built-in display cases versus having one display case for $3,000 that blocks off 2 windows. And at this point, I'm really torn, and I don't think I can support a display case here because it's not the best place for a permanent display case. I think we would do better by trying different locations with individual mobile display cases. And, if we spend, $800 on getting a bunch of used display cases, try them out, see how they work. And once we find the perfect place for them, then I think we go forward.
Okay. The one thing I wanted to point out there, Hal, when you had that picture up there where they had talked about locating it, that's where all the residents look at documents and review documents when they come into the township building. Mm-hmm. You don't want to really move that table from where that location is, where that chair is there. That would, even if you felt to agree with it or go forward with it, I don't think that would be a good location anyway, really, because where else would you look at documents?
Well, you got we do have the other 2 alcoves. Hold on a second. I'll go back. that we, well, which is one of the ideas that we do have. That's the location, and we have a table there. We then have a little table in the right side alcove or east side alcove, which currently has display information. Then you have the entryway. Then we have the other alcove, which just has a plastic tub and a bench. So there is space to put other tables, but the real question is whether the best use of an architecturally designed interior window is to put a bookcase or a display case in front of the window. And I'm having a tough time reconciling that with that's if this was a great location to put a display case, I wouldn't be hesitating. On the other hand, yes, we have a lot of people who have donated objects, and we have the Historical Society, which has actually split off and become a nonprofit specifically so that they can accept donations, if I remember, tax-free, towards getting display cases, towards displaying historic artifacts. And I know there are a lot of people who are saying that we should be spending tax dollars. And part of that is, well, yes, and you can, or at least you can spend your dollars and then write them off your taxes if you believe, and we should be asking for people to start donating towards these. And, I've put out feelers to try to find out what happened to Goshaw's display cases. How often do you get display cases come up for a reasonable amount that are from a jeweler that actually are locking so that nobody gets into them, nobody steals the paperwork and documents? But just from looking at the location, I understand the need to do something, but I also am skittish of do something permanent and put the bookcase or the display case in front and block the windows. That just doesn't make much sense to me. I think we would do better with having display cases because we need them. We ought to be using them. We ought to be having not just displays in the township. We should have them at the historical house. We should have them at the West Rock Hill Elementary, and we should probably have them over at Holiday House as well, because we've got a lot of stuff. It's a question of putting it out and how quickly can we get that information out and how easily can we make it for everybody to see. And there we go.
Okay.
So that's my research. And those are my thoughts.
Okay. Well, I will say that there was a lot of letters there. I think all those people were Historical Society members, if not all of them, pretty darn close to all of them. And it is not true that I don't support the Historical Society or their wishes. What I support is for the artifacts that were supposed to be displayed over there to be displayed over there. That was the original plan. And in all honesty, we're not talking about taking away both display cases. Right now, they're both used by the Historical Society. The Park and Rec only wanted one of them, and realistically, I think something could be and should be thought about regarding that matter. There are two of them in the meeting room, so I don't know how to move forward with this right now. With where we are, because I feel a certain way and David feels a certain way, and I respect that. And Hal's kind of still evaluating things, and that's okay, because he's only been on the job two months now here.
Well, I guess procedurally, or the Robert's Rules of Orders, or the parliamentarian point is, I disagree with the way the question is framed. That I look forward to having a display case from Mr. Durstein, great cabinet maker, excellent work, but trying to push excellent work into a not so excellent location is asking a lot of people, and I'd rather we have an excellent location for excellent work rather than a so-so location to have excellent craftsmanship. I think we can display both the craftsmanship of current woodworkers and the craftsmanship of the people who did the clay, did the blacksmithing, did the calligraphy and everything else. But I think this is trying to jam something in to a location that's not good when there are going to be other locations coming up in the Heritage House. They're not ready yet, but I think that we're talking about over $3,000, which is worth it for the right display in the right location. But until you're certain that it's the right location, my gut feeling is go get a $200 display case with a lock on it and put the stuff out, and we'll see how many people actually come through to look at it. Because I know we have a lot of people who are interested in displaying things, but displaying things is a separate question from where you display them and how you display them and whether you put them into a used case. It does kind of make sense to take the old artifacts and put them in an old case.
I'd like to respond, David Collingwood.
You have the floor, Mr. Collingwood.
Thank you. I'm going to specifically comment and then a question. I'm certain that that this is the right location, as do the 10 residents plus who wrote letters of support and they were read this evening, as opposed to 0 letters that didn't support this. And my question is to Hal is, if we put this to a vote, what's your position? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Well, I had read all the letters. Actually, I think I read every letter twice, and most of them support displaying things. They don't support displaying in any particular location.
They do in the lobby. They said that clearly.
Well, true, but you can display it in the lobby with a $100 case instead of a $3,100 case. I know that that's nitpick. I know that that's splitting the hairs, but I disagree with the way that the question is framed, because then it puts things at odds which do not have to be at odds. Displaying objects which the township has been bequested is part of the duty of the township. It's also something that we can delegate to the historical commission through the lease. It specifically says that the township will, coordinate with the historical commission to provide access to the artifacts. The question is it a fiscally appropriate way of displaying artifacts? And I think nailing a permanent case up against and over a glass window doesn't make sense, because if we can display things and try it out and see which ones work, and see if we find one that works better, makes it easier to see, then that's the one we want to replicate. So before you go buy the car, you test drive the car. And I think we should take things for a test drive before we decide to go buy the Corvette. First try and figure out what works before we decide what we're going to buy. I think we put the cart before the horse here.
You haven't answered my question.
I did. I disagree with the way that the question is framed. So I guess technically I would abstain.
Okay. So at this time, then I will say that we're not gonna move on this situation at this time. We will table it, and we will bring it up again at a future location or future meeting, and we will discuss it again.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's not off the table, but we're tabling it. Is there any other old business to discuss this evening from either of my two fellow supervisors?
I have
Seeing
none.
Any new business?
I do have, excuse me. I do have one piece of new business, which is a question from a constituent of when are we thinking about going back to live meetings? Since I'm on the planning commission and also have been involved with the open space and park and rec. I actually have been going out and listening to or sitting in or watching some of the other township meetings. And I know that Hilltown Township was live. Telford Borough is back to live meetings. Milford Township is doing hybrid meetings. Excuse me, as I'm losing my voice. And Richland Township is doing live meetings, as is East Rock Hill. So I did want to raise that idea that as somebody, since we all have to get to, since supervisors, we all have to get to a bunch of different meetings, so the virtual meetings can be very helpful. Having a hybrid meeting set up might actually be worthwhile sometime in the near future.
Okay, Greg, there was a concern of yours. I think we don't have enough space for residents to come in, right? Is that correct in saying that?
Well,
We
if
could-
you
we
want
could-
to space out people with about 6 feet apart, it makes it very difficult to have a lot of people into the meeting room.
Yeah.
So that is a difficulty. If the board sometime in the future wants to go back to in-person meetings with some people being in the meeting room and some people being out of the meeting room, I would need a month or two to set up a hybrid where supervisors wanted to go to the public meeting, they could. And if they didn't want to go to the public meeting, I could set up a hybrid type of thing. It will probably cost somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000 to set it up in our meeting room. And once you start that, you'll have the mixed bag of people being there and people like this.
Yeah. Okay, does that answer your question, Hal, for now?
Yep, that answers it for now. That seems like a lot of a lot more funding than I thought for doing the mixtures. I'm curious to see what Milford and Jeff Vay managed to get their stuff done, or how they arranged that. Have to try to copy people who've already done it.
Okay. All right. Seeing no other new business, I will open the floor for public comment. If you have public comment, please state your name and address.
Tony has his hand up.
Okay.
Tony Bogner.
Tony, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Tony Bogner, 2920 Clymer Avenue. I know it's public comment, but I just have a question in regard to the display cabinet. The artifacts, where are the artifacts now? Like, where are they at? Or that's the part I don't understand. Can
They're in the
somebody
meeting
answer that, or-
room. Yes, they're in the meeting room. That's where they're at right now, Tony. In the display cabinet that the Park and Rec would like to have. There's 2 display cabinets in there, and they're both occupied right now. And the Park and Rec would like one of them to be theirs. Not both of them, just one.
Okay, and then, but I also thought, my understanding with the Heritage House, that I thought that, there were certain times that was open over there, and that was open to the public, and that was to be open to see all these artifacts. Is that not true?
The Heritage House is still a work in progress with plaster, lathe, and a circular saw here and there. So it's not quite ready for prime time.
Okay. All right. Well, I filled out plenty of right to knows. I know Greg knows. I know you'll say it. But I do like the table there that I can review documents and such. So I think it would hinder that process. That's all my comment is. And thank you for allowing me.
You're welcome. Okay, next comment there, Greg. Do you have any?
I do not see any more public comment.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone else wants to have public comment.
They know if they do, raise your hand and state your name and address. I don't see anything on my screen that I'm looking at.
There's nothing on mine either.
Okay. All right. With that being said, I will close public comment, and I will entertain a motion for adjournment into executive session. Do I have
So
a
moved,
motion?
David Collingwood.
Thank you, Mr. Collingwood. Second?
I will second and ask for a 5-minute break in between.
Yep. All right. Motion's been made and second. All those signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you all for coming. Have a great rest of your February. See you in March.
Yes, and thank you everybody for letting us know what you think
Have a good
and
night.
listening to us.
Good night.